I'm talking about Penn State, as I understand it, the main campus principally. You think it would be, not like Berkeley or something like that. Gabe Kaminsky is a conservative student, writer. He's been published. He's been featured in all kinds of places nationally. He's a senior at the University of Pittsburgh. He's got a piece up at our friends at Broad and Liberty. Are conservative students welcome at publicly funded Penn State University? Many say no. Hey, Gabe, thanks for joining us here on Reading, Writing, and Reason.
Thanks for having me.
So, Gabe, give listeners a sense of your credits of where you've been featured. I think you've been on Fox, places like that, right?
Yeah, so I'm currently an intern at the Federalist. Some of the places I have written for are the Daily Wire, the American Conservative, the Washington Examiner, Real Clear Politics, and some other outlets.
Well, that's a pretty good start there to be at the Federalist. So you say that in July 2020, Penn State University's Liberal Arts College posted a tweet. And as I understand it, the tweet was saying it recognized and affirmed its commitment to viewpoint diversity, along with welcoming black students, female students, international students. The tweet said, "Dear conservative students, your viewpoints are important." Well, that seems pretty good, but in a way, it tells you that you're being put into a certain status there. So that's what you jump off your piece at Broad and Liberty about. What's your take on that? Well, what's the problem with that, if any?
Right. So Penn State University, they posted that tweet that dear conservative students, your viewpoints matter, right, or are important. So inevitably, that's something that's just pretty obvious, right? And it's great that they think that. The problem is they actually deleted that tweet after there was a pretty big significant blowback on Twitter and elsewhere from leftist students from the student publication. And so they essentially deleted that tweet affirming sort of viewpoint diversity after so much blowback. And the rationale for this was pretty misguided. They claimed that it was sort of an outdated, some sort of outdated image or outdated post, which doesn't really make sense. But what does make sense is that clearly, academia of today is very left wing, and they are very beholden to certainly left wing students and even left wing donors and professors, academics there. Look, I contacted the school very directly, and I asked them very, very two simple questions. I said, one, does the university stand by ideological diversity and believe conservative students have important viewpoints? Pretty simple, straightforward question. The second question I asked Penn State was, what specifically is Penn State University doing to protect academic freedom? What specific programs or initiatives? And the school declined to comment. They said they have nothing more to say at this time. And to me, I contact them. I feel like that's kind of a slam dunk for them. They can pretty simply say, we stand by free speech. We allow conservative students to have a voice. For example, I contacted Westchester University, and they were pretty straightforward. They said, we believe in free speech. We believe anyone of any ideology deserves to have a voice on our campus. I contacted Penn State Altoona, I believe, and I believe I received a similar response. I think that's the right branch campus I'm referring to. But I think the broader point is that, I spoke to various students in the university who have spoke to some of the various difficulties they have had on campus. These are students affiliated with Young Americans for Freedom, Young Americans for Liberty, Turning Point USA. These are all sort of conservative, right-leaning, advocacy groups on the college campus. So I think, Penn State is declining to, say how they affirm viewpoint diversity, and students don't really feel that they do.
Yeah, that seems to be. So one of their complaints was, well, you can't compare how conservatives are treated to students of color. So that seemed to be one argument from the left. And I don't know that anybody was saying these things are all equal or it's the same. I think top of mind, they were trying to, with the initial tweet, at least publicly, either virtue signal or reassure people that a campus like Penn State would be a place where conservatives would get a fair shot. What's your sense after this, Gabe? And you were at the University of Pittsburgh, or are. What's your sense of Penn State? I've always been suspect of them, even though they're in a pretty conservative, very conservative region of Pennsylvania, that we saw what happened with the college president. We saw when they did this thing that veterans might start arguing with the teacher. They put role plays in, and they might snap out. Be aware of that with the teacher. That caused a stir. What's your sense of what it's like for a conservative at a place like Penn State?
Look, yeah, I mean, I don't go to Penn State, and I am definitely hesitant to immediately deride Penn State as like the most anti-free speech campus in existence. I do think, as you know, as the article cited, there are various examples which we can point to, which raise a lot of questions. And I think, you know, in the piece I wrote, the thing that raised the most questions for me was a student describing how, you know, the taxpayer-funded student newspaper there, the Daily Collegian, wrote a story on him. He proposed a free speech bill. The student graduated about last year. They wrote sort of a feature on him, and they made the picture of the article. Instead of the picture they took of him, they made the picture of Richard Spencer, you know, a famous white supremacist. And I think, they said it was some sort of mix-up and miscommunication. And this is a student newspaper, right? So this isn't necessarily the administration. But I think you can point to this as, you know, a pretty ridiculous example of ways in which conservative students are often treated on the college campus. But by the third story of the student who went to, who was the chairman of Young America's Foundation, who was sort of harassed by a professor who claimed he was responsible for the Capitol riot along with Yaf.
When you hear that brought up, the Capitol riot, you know, we've had instances here in the Philadelphia area where some of this has happened. That's a pretty telling thing. So, Gabe, writing this and with your experience, what's your advice? What has to be done here in order to ensure, and I think this doesn't dawn on people still, they know if you're going to the University of Pennsylvania or Berkeley or some of these private schools particularly, but this is publicly funded, and it's a big number that goes into this. Is the state legislature and others, are they on top of this? What's your sense of it?
I think my sense is that, you know, along with what we've been seeing in the public square, which is that, you know, I think conservatives need to be very more aware of where they're giving their money. And there's definitely, I'm sure, a big base of you know, right-leaning, libertarian, you know, moderate conservative donors, people who graduated from Penn State. And I think they need to be more cognizant of where they're giving their money. And I think conservatives in general need to. You know, we're in a place right now where corporations are yielding immense influence over the country. And you have, you know, people need to be very cognizant of where they're giving their money. And I think legislatures especially need to think about this in terms of, you know, should people feel comfortable giving their tax money to places that are not willing to, you know, openly say that, you know, the point of the college campus back in the day was, you know, the college campus is somewhere where free speech is apparent, where there it's an opportunity to, you know, foster multiple viewpoints and have those debates. I think what's pretty clear nowadays is that those debates are happening less and less, and the debates, it's sort of a left-wing vacuum of sort of postmodernism and Marxism.
We're talking with Gabe Kaminsky. His piece at Broad and Liberty, are conservative students welcome at publicly funded Penn State University. Here's the thing, too, Gabe. Penn State, to my knowledge, arguably has the most alumni I've heard, or many maybe have heard this too, of any college out there. Are these people aware that this is going on? Because it doesn't strike me. How is it a hotbed of this? Is it the students, or is it the faculty that are driving this?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I think that it's probably a healthy mix, but I do think that, so for one, you know, you do have professors at these universities who are overwhelmingly left-wing. You have professors who, pretty openly are Marxists. I mean, I can speak to this at my university. I've taken classes where there is sort of a specific, some professors will openly say, I am a Marxist. And that's sort of not even thinking of as crazy to them or even to students. So that there's the piece where you have professors who have been educated through the system, which has been growing increasingly left, millennials and older, who sort of yield immense influence over these administrations. But you do also have students who have been groomed since a very young age. And it starts, this is something that we know is starting long before college. It's something that we can point to in critical race theory, which is, rifling through the education system, something that begins in elementary school. The education system has been, hijacked by unions wishing to keep it closed due to COVID, sort of this never-ending pandemic. But it has also been beholden to certainly these teachers at the younger level. I mean, I think the idea is we thought previously that college was a place where you got out. You would have left-wing views, and you'd get out, and you'd kind of adapt to the real world, because college is, the real world is not sort of a left-wing vacuum like college campus was, or it wasn't. And now you have all these woke millennials who have graduated from elite institutions, and now they're sort of indoctrinating Gen Z, I think, with a lot of this left-wing doctrine.
Well, and they might be able to find some hope in corporate America that's gone woke also. You're starting to see that. So it's not so far-fetched. You're right that there's no reality break that happens in all this. Did you get any response? What kind of response are you getting to this, Pete? Gabe Kaminsky with us. Conservative students welcome at publicly funded Penn State University. Many say no. Broadandliberty.com is where you'll find it. What kind of reaction did you get?
Yeah, I mean, I heard from some conservative students that I know personally or that I don't know who just, expressed sort of a similar sentiment. I think that's something that, at the University of North Carolina just last week, the student paper was vandalized and their entire database was removed from the website. It was hacked. And what they left on the website, the hacker, they wrote Nazi scum to this guy, Brian Piscatelli. He was just on Fox and Friends, which I think that is, that's a really strong example of how college conservative students are treated on the college campus. I actually, the other day, I heard from a professor at Penn State, Burks, and he actually forwarded a letter to me from the African Studies Department, I believe, at their Side Branch campus. And in the letter, which was sent to all students and staff, the administrator sort of, peddles, and she talks about systemic racism. She talks about, various sort of politically motivated topics. So, I've heard from professors and students, I think, who sort of certainly resonate with the I don't even know if it's biased. I don't know if they think they're biased, but the left-wing leaning stance on college campuses.
Yeah, and again, when people think there are safe harbors out there, with the exception of Hillsdale, and maybe I could go through a list, Gabe, there might be 10 of them, that they are safe. I can't imagine anything like this at Hillsdale, for example, is one that comes to mind. You may know others, but it's pretty rare. And the worst shock is, again, not if you have a sense if your kid's going to X, like I'll take the Berkeley or the school in Washington State, Evergreen, I guess it was, places like that this is going to be Oberlin. There's going to be trouble. These have been in the news. But when you think of Penn State, it is unlikely. You think of the football team. You think of all that stuff. You think of where it's located. Somehow or another, though, the infrastructure there leans this way, that putting up a tweet that you began this with, conservative students, diversity, inclusion, all those things of thought, gets that type of reaction and makes them take down the tweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's appalling, right, that they would take down the tweet. And you think about the scope of Penn State. I mean, this is a major university. I mean, tens of thousands of students go to Penn State. And, at this point, I mean, a lot of alumni, way more than tens of thousands of alumni. So, it's appalling, especially think about a university like this, sort of acknowledged as the flagship university in Pennsylvania, a place where, where I went to high school. In a given year, you'd have, 40, 50 kids who are going to Penn State. So, this is a school that yields immense influence over the state of Pennsylvania. and a school that rakes in, a lot of money. I mean, last year, I believe they operated under about a $7 billion budget.
Wow.
And, obviously heavily supported by taxpayer money.
Yeah.
But, just think about that in comparison to if a school like, Rosemont College, a lot smaller school. So I think we conservatives and people, we should put immense weight on this, given the size of Penn State.
Yeah, $7 billion. I remember when Corbett used to be on with me, they couldn't cut the budget at around 4.5, and now up to close to 7. Great work, Gabe. We'll keep our eye on you. Where do we follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Gabe__Kaminsky.
All right, and the piece is up right now at broadandliberty.com. Are conservative students welcome at publicly funded Penn State University? Many say no. Gabe, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.